Yes, we're
All
good.
right, guys, we are live. Welcome into another edition, this time an August 17th edition of the 4th and 1 podcast with yours truly, Coach Trey and Rusi. Look, we really do have a lot to get to, but I don't want to pass up, obviously, a really tragic affairs of events happening in Hawaii right now. So our thoughts and prayers go out to those affected. Um, Please, by all means, we don't have the means to be able to financially get involved at this time, but there are outlets and resources for you to be able to do so. So our thoughts and prayers, and hopefully at some point we would be able to get big enough to be able to make a contributable donation to something like that, if God forbid something like this happens again. But I just wanted to lead off with that. So thoughts and prayers out to those affected by a tragedy. And there's no real way to transition out of that other than to just get right to it. A couple of things that I want to get to today, to just kind of get away from exchanging the pleasantries, is obviously there has been a massive, and I know that you know what I'm talking about, a massive amount of discussion about. I keep talking about this, but the whole conference alignment. But my angle is to know how that's going to affect spreads and betting, because this is obviously at the heart of like what we're trying to talk about as far as the whole ecology of making money. And so the one thing I want to really highlight is an angle that I found, and we're going to talk about the Big Ten here really quick, guys. Russo and I, you obviously you know that I've brought this up to you off camera, but I want to bring this up. So in the last 3 years, I really don't know how this is possible, but it seems as though this is kind of like a lightning storm. But last 3 years, 24-10, Ohio State is on their overs. That means out of 34 games, 24 of them they've won their over. They've over projected on that. That seems kind of like a lock in. So what my question to you, Russo, is if you're going to take in USC and Oregon, what does that do to that? Like, what is that? So say we pay attention to that and we bet that, give me 3 games this year. Obviously, you take the big two, and then maybe like a no-show game, um, I should say a lower end conference game. Say we bet that 3 times and it goes 100%. How does that get affected when you bring in high-powered offenses with, frankly, very little defense? Alex Grinch hasn't done anything with the defenses yet over there at USC. Maybe this year changes, but how does that affect going forward?
Yeah, so I mean, two things. You can look at it from a play style, like you mentioned. Like there's just a clash of two styles of play, uh, and that's just going to come down to talent on the field. Uh, I think the biggest one outside of that, though, the biggest factor that's going to affect spreads is traveling now. So we've got, next year, if this does go to fruition, we've got Oregon traveling to Ohio State, Michigan traveling to Oregon, stuff like that, where it's way longer of a road trip. And look, I know these guys are flying probably private. They've got, they're going to get taken care of, but this is completely different than what they're usually. Oh, I mean, these are young kids, man. Like, it's not like these are professionals who constantly do this on a regular basis. This is going to be new. There's not a lot of deep deep travels as far as everyone's kind of bunched together. So like when we start expanding and when we start getting into that, I think it's more going to be an off the field issue, the transition to that's going to affect spreads, win totals, and things like that. So I mean, sure, we can talk about the skill players, the what will actually affect it, but I think you will see some numbers slightly dip. Ohio State, Michigan, they'll go down a bit. They'll go down to maybe 9.5 instead of being a 10.5. So, yeah, I think both of those factors play huge, and we'll have to see how those dynamics play out next year.
Well, you kind of walked right into, and I know we brought this up last year, and I'm not sure if this was something that we even said, on camera, but um, if you want to cheat, home field matters more in college than it does the Sunday game. What matters in the Sunday game is more of the time to practice and the time of rest more than it's okay. If KC plays 3 straight road games and one's a Monday, one's a Thursday, and another one's another Monday. That may not be all that terrible on the paper, depending on who they're playing, and say they play like the bottom three teams or the number two team in their division. So it's like one game is like a 50-50 and two you should win. And they end up going 1-2 in those games. And you're sitting here going, how is that even possible? So I think it's more of a preparation standpoint for the kids. It's absolutely the home field. They get nervous. They are young. Like, think about how intelligent you were whenever you were 18 to 22 years old. The answer is not very. I know I wasn't. So, and when I say intelligent, I don't mean that these kids are dumb. The kids are smarter than we were when we were their age, and it's not even close. It's the emotional intelligence. It's the focusing on the here and the now. The old Nick Saban adage of be where your feet are. It's those kinds of things. And so, in reality, that matters. So I guess you're absolutely right on that. And so if we're going to touch on home field advantage, then I guess we can't possibly pass up the absolute dumpster fire that I saw on Twitter from Vanderbilt. Let me tell you what I'm talking about. Go on Twitter, anybody, or X, whatever that means. Go on there and type up what Vanderbilt's stadium looks like and just give Vanderbilt football a search and go and look at the fact that they have a game in like 10 or 11 days and they still have construction equipment and laid out like PVC pipe and steel laying around. So what I wanted to know is how that was going to affect their over under. And it seems as though 185, minus 180 and minus 185 was the over on their 3.5 wins for the season. That number's down to minus 170 just since that picture came out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let that bake a little bit because I believe I'm not 100% on this. I don't allow me to lock this in just yet, but I believe I'm going to go 3 years in a row where I'm going to bet Vanderbilt to go over their win total. I've ridden them for 2 years. You guys know how I feel about this. It is always fun to cheer for a have-not, so to speak. And I want this for them. Thoughts?
The thing with Vanderbilt is, one, their stadium is kind of like an average high school stadium, right? I mean, it's not really, it's not a SEC like stadium. So that, sure, home field advantage or what, I don't think that really plays a factor into it. I think the bigger factor with Vanderbilt is a lot of their games are going to be played at 11 a.m. And we already know how that transitions. If you get Vanderbilt on the schedule, it's going to be likely an 11 a.m. game.
Especially away. The two words you want to hear as an SEC football team is Vandy away, because that means you get your away game utilized in Nashville. Everybody gets drunk, brings a cowboy hat, and usually if your team's on their ball and you know what I mean.
Yeah, so they're going to be more used to that compared to maybe other teams that aren't. So I think that's a bigger factor as far as maybe just playing Vanderbilt in general, not even their home. But yeah, their stadium's like an average high school stadium, and it's below average in Texas because I know Texas has better college like stadiums over there. So, and shout out to my lovely fiance who's watching. She mentioned high altitudes being a contributing factor to lower scores. High altitude could be, that just goes into the point. The travel issues. These guys in the north aren't used to traveling West Coast for games, so I think that's a good point. So yeah, and that goes for any sport. I mean, that goes for any sport, but just for traditionally, you're used to the same routes in college. The SEC, you're in the Southeast, you're not traveling too far. The longest one is Texas to Florida. Now that we're getting into this area, it's going to be a bit different. And I think initially it's going to take some time to get used to. So shout out to Tina.
I will absolutely say shout out to the teens here. Look, I'm not a Swiftie, but I certainly could be convinced. I didn't realize that T Swift was ever like gonna make, I hate to say the word renaissance, but like she is low key like stayed in the mix and come back in full force like cow print. So hats off to her for being frankly a badass. But look, we've gotten really, really far into the weeds with this. This is just another one of my topics that I wanted to bring up since we're already talking about the betting angle of things. I'm gonna try to make this as black and white as I can be, because I don't want it to seem like I'm attacking anybody individually. But what I really need to know is why Notre Dame continues to step on their own feet when it comes to getting this right. You do not in college football have you'd have no specificity. You in essence play whoever it is that you wish to play, whoever your AD schedules you to play. They have 3 really, really tough games this year. So hats off to them for doing it. But when you get into the business of reading things like Notre Dame with a full vote towards Stanford being added to a conference, and then playing them would go to part of them playing their Power 5 games, but wouldn't count against them in the standings. Like, what does that even mean? Like, because you can't have your cake and eat it too. Not in college football, not in an expanded playoff, not anymore. So I need clarity from some of the people from Indiana on what exactly that looks like and why we're supposed to defend that, because the way it sounds to me is that you're hoping that you can, yet again, have your cake and eat it too by beating up on a team that you should beat. I'm not saying Stanford can't, have, I mean, obviously they brought in Christian McCaffrey, but you don't see many Christian McCaffreys walking the world now, do you? So assuming that that's not the case, why are we supposed to sit here and reward this? Or you want like a golf clap? Like, so I'm over that. But what I want to bring up to you, sorry for my tangent, is their win totals at 8.5. So if you want to do it, I'll pull it up for you right here. Look, I candidly, I'm not touching this, and I'm going to give you a couple reasons why. Number one, because last year I watched Marshall ruin most of those people in Indiana's days, maybe years. Now, granted, hats off to Coach for getting them together. I mean, he has an incredible way of making those guys want to play hard for him. I will never stand against that. You and I both know how I feel about him. It is Coach Mark knows what he's doing. Marcus is going to start with Navy. He gets Tennessee State. He gets NC State, Central Michigan. Win. You go and get Ohio State at home. And
you think they start off 4-0?
And they play Ohio State September 23rd at 7:30 at home. And they are going to.
I push back on your narrative of them starting 4-0. I see two games. I see 2 games where they could potentially lose. They'll be favored, but that NC State game is going to be tough. And Navy isn't bad this year. Navy's taken some good steps. Not saying they're going to win, but I think that's a trap game. Game 1, first game of the season. And the NC State game on the road, it's just in between two. It's sandwiched in between 2 trap games. I think they start 3-1. That's my opinion. Going into Ohio State.
Ask Louisiana State University how they feel about playing a service academy between games. It's not a fun time.
Yeah.
The only difference is that they lead off with Navy. They're playing it in Dublin, Ireland. I don't know if many people know that, but that's going to be a sick game. I have them going 4-0, 3-1 and worst. But again, that's 8.5 for a reason. Okay, they get Ohio State at home. You'd have to really convince me to make me pick them over Ohio State today. They go and they play Duke and Durham. Call it what you will. There's no reason why they should lose to them, but they also have to go to Louisville too. So back-to-back weeks, you're getting them there. And then you get USC at home. You get Pitt at home. And you go to Clemson. And you get Wake at home. That's going to be a fun game. Sam Hartman against his old school, the mesh offense. How does that look? And you finish out the year in Palo Alto playing Stanford. And you know how I feel about them in that game. So I'm not touching it. If you want to call it an in-season game-by-game bet, I'll certainly do that with you. But to touch 8.5 right now with Notre Dame, I can't do that.
I mean, I would be more inclined to go in the under. The positive side for them is that they get a lot of these crucial games at home. They get Ohio State at home. They get USC at home. Those are two big games that maybe they can flip one of those to a win. I personally don't think so. If they are going to do it, it's going to be against USC. Um, but Ohio State isn't. It's not. We can't think like the Ohio State of the last couple of years. They don't have C.J. Stroud anymore. We don't know if they're going to bring the same productivity that they did the last couple of years on both offense and defense. So I don't know. I think it's a good stay away. If I had to go, it's under or pass for me. I just think there's too many tough games on the schedule. I mean, when you're talking about Clemson, USC, Ohio State, just those three right there. I mean, if you assume they lose all three of those, then you've got to basically chalk the rest of your schedule. So that's tough, and it's always tough to chalk every single game. I mean, ask LSU, ask all the tough SEC schools. And to your point about the conferences, I mean, Notre Dame's been a political character as far as conference is concerned the last several years. So, I mean, it's not shocking. And I don't really give a shit anymore. I mean, I don't pay any attention to Notre Dame as far as, scheduling, getting into a conference. If they want to actually get into a conference, good on them. Yeah, because we've been waiting on that for several years now. But I just stopped caring after a while.
So, just because I want to be consistent here, we are going to address the elephant in the room. The reason why they say "Go Doors," teens, is because they are the Commodores, and it is a abbreviated way of
Go Doors.
Another reason why they say anchor down, because anchors fall because of gravity. Look, I could do this all day. In reality, the last thing that I want to bring up is I did take a look at some of the FanDuel things, and I think this is going to play right into what you want to talk about, Russo. Is I did not know that they were going to do such a masterful job of enticing me into these into these awards. I love Nick Singleton at plus 900 for the running back. I love that you can get good plus money for Quinshon Judkins. That man follows a block like a cat follows its owner to the food bowl in the morning. Speaking from experience, I'm telling you, I did not know that I was going to love those that much. I haven't really tried to find like a sleeper pick yet. Another one that I really liked a whole lot was the Bolitnikov odds that are coming out, and I think you have a couple of points that you want to make on that because I think you do too.
No, yeah. So I really just I picked my favorite long shots in both of those awards. It's the first time we've seen them on FanDuel or even any sports book offering those awards preseason. Because I used to bet offshore and I never used to see that. So, as far as the receiver award, the Bolitnikov, as far as I haven't picked like my favorite. This is just a sleeper. Troy Franklin from Oregon. Um, I think he had a pretty damn good season last year. He's plus 2,500. He's going to be the number one. And if Oregon does everything they're supposed to do and accomplish, I think he could be a top 5 in that race. And to get him at plus 2,500 is, in my opinion, great value. That's not who I think is going to win. I just think it's the best value play I've seen so far. As far as the running back award, the Doak Walker, is that how you pronounce it? Another sleeper I found there is Frank Gore Jr. at plus 5,000. I mean, he rushed for, I want to say, north of 14 to 1,500 yards last year. Sure, he plays for Southern Miss. He doesn't play for the notable colleges or the big universities, but he's only going to improve. He's got an NFL, he's just like his dad. He's got an NFL-like frame, and I think he's going to only improve upon his numbers from last year. So I think at plus 5,000, that's a good value. And I know there's going to be politics on, they're not the best team. They play in the weak conference. Stats are stats. So we've seen we've seen some people win these awards that don't play for the notorious colleges and universities. So that's what I like as far as my sleepers. I'll come and give you my official picks. When we go, I know Quinchon was a great. I think he's the favorite for the running back, and the receiver is obviously going to be Marvin Harrison. Those are your two favorites. It's not fun to bet the favorites, though. I like betting the sleepers. So that's something that I really wanted to look into first, and we'll get into that before the season starts.
Look, I think in a world where we're playing the I don't know if they're going to win game, when you get value, I'm not making bets on things that I don't think are going to win. So what I want you to remember is that when we say things like that, we have to consider the fact that in the event that for example, if you wanted to go Troy Franklin, that has a more plausible outcome given who he's playing for, more than a Frank Gore Jr. Only because if Ole Miss goes 9-3, that's feasible and manageable to do. Michigan could have went 10-2 last year, and Blake Corum is winning that. So I think you have to and I hate that you have to do the the ivory tower game, but sometimes it does play out that way. So you have to be cognizant of that, but also intentional with the money that you're spending and how you're spending it. Now, what I would love to see is a parlay, like just a massive sleeper parlay. You just go like 2 or 3 deep, and pick like your second option for one award and like your 2 favorites for the other award, assuming that something happens, quarterback gets hurt, they can't get the ball out to them, something like, like something like that. Like give me like, for example, I told you last week that I loved a Jordan Travis odds to win the Heisman. Is that me telling you that I'm picking him today to win the Heisman? Might, but I'm not going to do it before the season starts, because you have to want to see those kinds of things. And I get it. We try to make these things a preseason bet, but for taking that big of a leap, I think Jordan Travis is worlds better than people are giving him credit for. And the reason for that is because his jump from 2021 to 2022 was so stark that it's ignorant to assume that it would go down. So that next step, if there is another next step, if there can be another next step, is Heisman competing level. Obviously, you imagine that Caleb Williams is going to be number 1 overall quarterback taken next year. Everybody wants to say that. Last year it wasn't going to be Bryce. You and I both knew that it was going to be Bryce. So take a little bit of that into perspective, but just know that storylines are going to follow people, and Vegas is going to follow storylines, and Vegas is going to follow their money from the jump. So keep that in mind.
And I'm shocked you haven't mentioned. I know you were, I know you were very high on Will Anderson for Heisman last year. I know, both you and a good friend of ours, Chad, both have brought up Harold Perkins.
Oh, I brought him up.
Yeah, so I plus 15,000 if you want to go lay some of that down. One day the tide will turn. One day,
I know, man.
We don't know when, but it's always good to always take one. So Harold Perkins is that guy this year. So.
Two episodes ago, we discussed him at a very, very distant length. I didn't give an official go and put this money down, but I did bring it up for it to be bet on. I did put money on that, by the way. It's not the only one that I put money on. There's a couple of other people that I will share, as the release episode goes for, week 0, week 1, whatever you want to call it, on what that looks like. What I will say is, getting into your next point, when you spend money, especially on a sports book, whatever the case may be ready to have heartache. You and I both know that when we make these picks, we're not making them just to. Obviously, there's a content mindset for it, but you have to go with your gut and believe it, because we have to be married to this. This is on the internet. Like, we have to go back and be judged by these things. And so keeping a log of that is really, really important to us. And so I promise you, I wouldn't go and put money on over Vanderbilt 3.5 if I didn't think they'd actually go and do it. And with the odds being and what it is being, that cheddary for minus 170 or 180, whatever the case is, showing me that Vegas agrees. So does that mean you go and lay $1,000 on it? No, it does not. But can you lay some and have fun with it? Yeah.
We don't unit shame around here, man. We just don't.
No.
We really do this because we just enjoy it. And whether you want to put $1 down on every bet, whatever your bankroll appease, we just love having a fraction of action to get involved and just have some skin in the game, man. It's just so fun to me. Instead of just being a hometown fan for your hometown teams, you can basically be a fan of anyone. So that's what being a degenerate is. So I enjoy it. I wanted to get your opinion on a couple of bets that I've made. I made 3 conference winner parlays, and I just want to get maybe your opinion on it and or maybe ask your prediction before I give mine, and let's see how we align on these. So I've got in my first one, which is my most confident one, I went in order of confidence. I've got ACC, Big 12, SEC, Conference USA. Okay. Any names that jump off the table to you on who you think I might have bet?
Because I know you as a person.
Yeah.
What I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna guess on your bet. I'm gonna tell you what I think.
That's fair. Yeah.
Way we can
talk back and forth. Yeah.
So for an ACC, I think it's a 2-dog race. I think it's Florida State. I think it's Clemson. Call it what it is. If you wanted my pick today, I would be very, very comfortable with going with Florida State. I think their talent's unbelievable. I think Jared Verse is a freak. I think, God forbid, that young man stays healthy. He's going to change his family's life forever. I think the NFL cannot wait to have him. You would even make a case to me that they would pray that he would just sit out and stay healthy because that guy's going to go high. But I also love Cade Klubnik, dude. He sat behind DJU and he knew that the job was his, and he still stayed. And it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different whenever if the coach is telling you behind closed doors, kid, the team is yours. Just wait your turn. This guy's had his, but he knew that he was the best quarterback in that room. So I'm extremely, extremely interested. But man, if you made me pick today, I'll go Florida State.
So I went Clemson. I think you're right.
Okay.
In the Big 12, I'm pretty sure, I've had some pushback on this, and, obviously we can get our good buddy Snee to come on and maybe give his opinion, but I've got Texas. Look, this is, if I go 3 for 4 and Texas is the one that screws me, I'm done. I'm officially done. There's just so many chances I can give this team.
I know.
Before I just run out. And we had that issue. We've had those issues with teams in the past. I am officially done because Texas A&M is the first team that's been done on my list. Like, absolutely fucked it. But as far as this, Texas, I'm choosing them. Georgia in the SEC, it's a chalk pick. However, I would rather be on the right side of things when the power shift happens, which I think it has already. So let's just go with Georgia. And then I don't know if you know much about the Conference USA. I think Western Kentucky is running it away.
Yeah,
Western
baby.
Kentucky, dude. I love their offense. I love everything about them. I think they're going to be probably favored in 9 or 10 of the 11 or 9 or 10 of the 12 games they play. Not a tough schedule. So, yeah, I think their offense is too much, and I think they get the job done. Plus 19-15 for those 4 conferences or 4 picks. That's my most confident pick. I really love those 4. You're higher on Florida State than I am. That's fine. I think it's okay to differ on those two boats. I'm really coming down to, Dabo it's kind of a prove it year for him now. He's off the boat with DJ Ukulele. You know that project's done. How does he navigate now?
Mhm.
You know he's lost Trevor Lawrence. That chapter's done. The DJ project is done. Now where does he navigate? Is this his last stand at Clemson? You know, if he struggles this year, is he hopping off the board and going somewhere else? Or is he going to try and keep the power in a weaker conference and keep Clemson at the top of the hierarchy in college football? So that's going to be a tough one. So, but I put it in there. I'm very confident in them this year. So that's my first one.
Okay.
The second one, and look, these are three just they're not Power Five conferences. So I mean, and there's some gambles in this one. But in the Mountain West, I think they're the third team that's favored in accordance with the odds. I love Air Force. Air Force has established they're getting a lot of their defense back. And I think they only gave up 15 points a game last year. And we already know what their offense is. Their offense is, you know, they lost two of their best players. They lost their quarterback and they lost their running back. But their offense is their offense. It's plug and play. It's get those big boys on the line and let's go. So I think with Fresno being down this year, I know Fresno was a big favorite in the Mountain West, and Boise State as well. I don't have a lot of faith. I've watched some of those late night games where you're looking for something to bet at 9 p.m. or later to try and find a game, and I'm just not confident with those two schools, but I am with Air Force, just mainly on defense. If they get a lead with that defense, it's insane. And I'll follow that with a Mac Daddy bet with Toledo winning the Mac and Tulane to repeat in the AAC conference. Uh, I think they're going to continue their success in that
Yeah.
conference. I
Yeah.
think Toledo is far and away the best team in the MAC. No explanation really needed. So you get plus 4,085 on those three right there. I think Air Force is the one that really gets that one going. Any thoughts on that? I know those are kind of like some lower tier conferences, but I did some research and I like those three picks, and that one has been submitted.
The one that I want to, and I'm going to backtrack a little bit if you don't mind.
Of course.
I am a 1 billion% on board if you want to go Air Force, especially considering that that if you're going to bet anything with the Mountain West, you kind of have to have a gut feeling about it. Like the odds are going to be what they are. I know this may upset some Mountain West voters here, but there's not a lot of stark outliers except for what you can deduce for yourself. So if you do the research, you go in and you feel this is your team and this is your team and we rides. But what I want to backtrack on just a little bit, I think that if Texas does not win it this year, if Texas does not win it this year, with who they've been recruiting with and bringing in, all they're going to do is make the odds better for other teams to just have the SEC. You know what I'm saying? Like they're just going to be added in at maybe a buck ahead of like Texas A&M or Ole Miss next year if they have a good year this year. And all it's going to do is just give me an extra plus 100 on betting Georgia or an Alabama or an LSU or a Tennessee or whoever else to win win the SEC. So if you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? Because I'm sitting here telling you today, those kids have all the confidence in the world. There is not a soul in Austin, Texas that thinks that they would vote for their team to win the SEC today. Do you think so? No. So if they don't win the Big 12, then I'm not going to say I'm done with them, but I certainly won't be betting in preseason. And I absolutely 1,000% think that people are sleeping on Kansas State. Watch out. Watch out.
Yeah, Kansas
Watch
State.
out.
Kansas State's always a dog. Yeah, I I will say I did a special little bet on FanDuel that I was going to get into next. Now, Kansas State's not involved, but I guess I will pivot to there are two Big 12 teams in there. And so on FanDuel, they have this little builder where you can pick up to 8 teams to win 6 games, 6+ games. So it's not going to be like your top dogs like Georgia being involved here. It's going to be a lot of the mid-tier schools here to win 6 games. That's half your games. So I just want to get your opinion on some of these. I threw in an 8-piece to get this is all for plus 1,400. So some of it's a little chalky. The two Big 12 teams I threw in were Texas Tech and Oklahoma State. Both finished 7-5 last year in the regular season. Oklahoma State's obviously going to have a lot of turnover with their team, but the last time Gundy had a losing season?
I'm going to go ahead and say, golly, man, I don't even know if I have no
2005.
idea.
2005.
I was going to say 6.
2005 was the last time they had a losing season. So, give me them to win 6 games. Give me Texas Tech, who also finished 7-5. It's in the Big 12. You've got Texas, and it's everyone else. And I think that's good for some of these mid-tier teams. You could have inserted anyone here. You could Baylor, TCU. A lot of those teams are going to punch up on each other, and I feel like you're going to see a lot of teams get to 6, like maybe 6-6 in the Big 12. So, see, you've got a point. Go on.
Do you want me to? Okay, I'm not asking anymore. From September 23rd is from game 4 until the end of the season. Texas Tech gets West Virginia on the road, Houston at home, Baylor on the road, Kansas State at home, BYU on the road, TCU at home, Kansas on the road, UCF at home, Texas on the road. So, all the way down. That schedule is bonk city, brother. And I am 1,000,000,000% on the Texas Tech train. If you want to get weird. And
Where are their first 3 games?
Remember their first 3 is going to be is Wyoming. Shout out Miami. Shout out Wyoming rather. Then you get Oregon at home, and you get Tarleton State.
So they'll be 2-1. So you'll need to win 4 games basically in your conference play. I don't see how they don't do that. Like I said, every Big 12 team their schedule is going to look like that. There's just a bunch of really good average teams all bunched up together. And I just think they're going to go SEC mode and just beat up on each other. That's what basically everyone outside of Georgia and Alabama does. With the exception of LSU last year. They just beat up on each other. You don't know who's going to win which game, but it's going to happen, and teams are going to beat each other. I would be shocked, especially with them going 7-5 last year. I would be shocked if they didn't go 7-5. So those were my 2 Big 12 schools out of the 8. I took Pitt to win 6 games. They were 8-4 last year. I really love their culture over there. I saw a lot of locker room videos, like after the games they would win. They had a lot of comeback victories, and I was like rooting for them.
Right.
Just seeing the culture in Pitt, post Kenny Pickett and post, probably the best quarterback they've had in the last decade or two. And they went 8-4 last year. So I'll take the small drop off to win half their games in a conference similar to the Big 12. It's Clemson, Florida State, everyone else that's going to beat up on each other. So those are 3 out of the 8. I'm just going to rattle off some names here. Marshall, they went 8-4 last year. Love that squad. Easy schedule this year. They're going to win half their games. Got Wyoming. They went 7-5 last year. Weak conference schedule. I think they'll pull off 6. And my last three are Northern Illinois, LA Tech, and FAU. I really just did some research into teams that are had a lot of injuries last year, and underperformed due to those injuries, but are getting back those injured players. For example, Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech went 3-9, lost their two best receivers last year. They did very well in the transfer portal, and I can easily see them winning 6 games on that schedule. And FAU, same thing, had a lot of injuries on that team last year, still managed to win 5 games. A lot of people coming back to play from the last season's team. Win one more game than they did last year. I'm sure they'll do that. And Northern Illinois, same thing. Injury ridden, went 3-9 last year. However, they have a lot of skill on that team, did well in the transfer portal, easy schedule up north, and the MAC outside of the top 3 teams. So I had all of that to win plus 14-16. We'll post that on the Twitter when it gets closer. But if you're watching this right now, definitely take a look at that. I know that's a little fun thing FanDuel lets you do because you can't really parlay win totals. It's kind of weird. So it gives you an opportunity to do that. So that's it for that on win totals for me. I don't know what your opinion is on some of those. I know you might have your own maybe next week. If you want to pick your 8 teams that you like that are kind of flying under the radar, maybe we can break yours down as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to have it. I think I'm still honest to Christ been working on it. I really wanted to focus on a couple of these like news points.
No, of course.
And for those reasons, I love that you're starting to bring it up because it honestly puts my feet to the fire to want to either pick it apart or join it and ride it with you. So, I mean, to be frank, I really do want to just say that these things do take a lot of time, guys. So if it is at all possible for you guys to drop us a like, drop us a subscribe, it would mean the absolute world to us for you guys to kind of jump on board, get us at the top of your recommended page whenever you open up the app. You want to listen to college football talk, maybe while you're driving to work. If you're like me and you're in sales and you just have hours of windshield time, I love nothing more than a podcast, whether it's college football or big bro Joe Rogan. Shout out to the Joe Rogan podcast or my recent obsession here is just deer hunting, anything deer hunting, man. That's just my deal. But I've been like eating, sleeping, breathing, and floating on a lot of these metrics, and there's so much to get to. But obviously, you can only get to so much in a day. So I believe that for me puts a button on today. Unless there's anything else you want to cover before we wrap up here on a Thursday.
Just to close, we made a big player prop parlay last week, or was that the week before? I can't remember. We had a lot of love. Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Okay. So they've added some more players on DraftKings. So just to leave us off, I'm not going to go into detail. I kept both Neighbors and Judkins, the plays that we like for them. Judkins over 13.5 touchdowns and Neighbors over 900.5. But I love, you said you had a lot of love for Singleton this year. I love his yards. I think they're very low this year, 950.5 for 12 games. I mean, yep. I can see that dude being a 90 to 100 yard rusher per game. I don't know how to pronounce this. Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback for Colorado. Shedeur. Over 19.5 pass touchdowns. They're projected to be bad. Makes me think they're going to throw the ball more. Give me 20 touchdowns there passing. Dylan Gabriel for Oklahoma, over 3,000 yards passing. Another school that's pass heavy. Maybe, they're going to be losing a lot of games or in a lot of close games where they're going to need to pass. And Dylan Gabriel can sling the ball. And my last one would be Troy Franklin, over 7.5 receiving touchdowns. He had 9 last year, and he's clearly going to be the number one. So all of those together, plus 4,000, another play I really love. And like I said, I can't hammer enough Judkins and Neighbors. Those are 2 of my favorite plays. I would always set those 2 as the foundation for any play you're making outside of sports, outside of college football. And I'll leave us on this. I gave y'all Jake Paul by decision 2 weeks ago. I'm telling you, give me Sean O'Malley during the UFC main event this weekend against Aljamain Sterling. He's plus 200 to 220 right now, depending on where you're at. And don't be shocked if you take a flyer on the submission. Just telling you.
But the Sugar Show.
Sugar Show, dude.
The
Huge fan.
Sugar Show.
He's the closest thing to Conor McGregor there's been. I'm hoping he gets his dub here. He gets his crown. That's it for me.
What a way to end it, man, because I love Sugar, dude. Look, shout out to Shugs. I know obviously he's a big hoops fan. I mean, big bro likes to take jump shots on folks when he knocks them out. But that was honestly like the craziest thing in the world to see that man get a drop foot loss. This still haunts me. But I'll ride with you, even if I'm not obviously watching with you. But just remember, guys, like we're here. Like it's 2 weeks away. Like we're literally knocking on the doorstep of college football 2023. I'm so excited about it. I know you are too. We are absolutely thrilled to be able to do this every single week for you guys. So again, if you could drop us a subscribe and a like, engage with us. We'd love to get on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Please give us some content on there if you would like. We're going to start to try to put some of these plays out into social media space. So
TikTok, man, it's been a little delayed because I'm working on my editing. I don't want to put out bullshit. I'm working on the editing with that, but we're going to get the plays out before the season starts one way or the other. So
big time. All right, man. That wraps us up. Thank you guys for tuning in. Check us out. Peace.